Good day, classmates, especially to our beloved Professor Dr. MJ Salon. I'm going to be sharing with you today my topics on Chapter 11, Organizational Communication, and Chapters 13, Groups Behavior, Teams, and Conflict. We have Chapter 11, Organizational Communication. So our learning objectives for Chapter 11, we have first, know the types of organizational communication. Second, is to understand why interpersonal communication often is not effective. Third, learn how to increase your listening effectiveness. And lastly, learn ways to improve your communication skills. So, what is organizational communication? Organizational communication refers to the form and channel of communication among members of organization such as corporation, nonprofit, or small businesses. We have the different types of organizational communication. We have the upward, downward, business, informal, and interpersonal. Upward communication, or sometimes called as bottom-up communication. It is a communication of subordinate to superior or employees to manager. It is ideal for upward communication when employees speak directly to management in an environment with an open door policy. However, direct upward communication also may not be workable because employees often feel threatened by a manager and may not be willing to openly communicate bad news or complaints. To minimize the number of direct people communicating with the top executive, many organizations use serial communication. With serial communication, the message is relayed from an employee to her supervisor, who relays it to her supervisor, who in turn relays it to her supervisor, and so on, until the message reaches the top. Although this type of upward communication relieves the top executive of excessive demands, it suffers several drawbacks. The drawbacks or the downside of upward communication is its serial communication, wherein its first problem is that the content and the tone of the message change as it moves from one person to another. And the second drawback is that in serial communication, bad news and complaints are seldom relayed. It is because of the stress associated with the bad news. This effect has been labeled as the mom effect or the minimized unpleasant message effect. The mom effect negatively affects the organization by keeping important information from reaching the upper level. But for an employee, the mom effect is excellent survival strategy because no one wants to be bearer of bad news. However, when a bad news is passed to supervisor, employees tend to use politeness. It is it is to soften the bad news. However, people have no problem passing on bad news to peers, especially when the organizational climate is generally negative. So it's easy, dali ra basta nakagets na ka nga negative na ang environment, manglibak na dayon ka, joke. So serial communication, because of this problems, another methods are done to better facilitate upward communication. So we have another methods is we have attitude survey, focus groups, suggestion box, and third parties. So what is attitude survey? Attitude survey are usually conducted annually by an outside consultant who administer a questionnaire asking employees to rate their opinions in such factors as satisfaction with pay, working condition, and supervision. Employees are also often given the opportunity to list complaints or suggestions that they want management to read. And then, the consultant or the facilitator of the survey will tabulate the responses and reports the finding to management. And then for the next method is we have the focus group and exit interview. It is in upward communication to hold focus group in which an outside consultant meet with groups of current employees to get their opinion and suggestion. This information is then passed on to the management to spar candid responses, and the consultant is not told the name of the employee in the focus group, and no direct codes that could potentially identify a particular employee. Exit interviews on the other side, with the employee voluntarily leaving an organization, it also provides an excellent source of information. Thus, an interview will be conducted to, to determine emotional charge, and an organizational can learn much from listening to the real reason that the employee is leaving the organization. And then we have another method. We have the suggestion box. The suggestion box is where you put boxes for your suggestion and complaint. The biggest advantage of this box is that they allow employee to immediately communicate their feelings in an anonymous fashion. Suggestion boxes provides a safe voice for subordinates and customers and are essential feedback to the organization as well. And then next we have the third party facilitator, wherein the use of third party such as liaison or an ombudsperson is another method that can increase upward communication. They are both responsible for taking employees' complaint and suggestion, personally working with the management to find solution. The advantage of this system is that the ombudsperson is neutral and works for a solution that is acceptable for both employees and management. Furthermore, an ombudsperson is typically supervised at the vice presidential level, so she is not concerned about being fired if she steps on few toes looking for a solution. However, the ombudsperson method is often not used because organizations do not want to expense of an employee who does not produce. Downward communication is the transfer of information within the organization from the top management down to its lower level. It is the supervisor to subordinate or management to employees. Downward communication can be accomplished with the aid of bulletin boards, policy manual, newsletters, and internet. So for bulletin boards, This can be seen, this kind of bulletin boards can be seen everywhere. The main use of bulletin boards is to communicate non-related opportunities such as scholarships, optional meetings, and items for sale. And then policy manual is the place for posting important changes in policy or procedure. Manual contains all the rules under which employees must operate. Manuals are written in highly technical language, although they can be written in less technical styles to encourage employees to read them, as well as make them easier to understand. And the next methods to have the downward communication is the newsletter. Newsletters are designed to bolster of bolster employees' morale by discussing happy or inconspicuous events such as birthdays, babies, and ball game scores. Newsletters are a good source of information for celebrating employee success, providing feedback on how well the organization is doing, introducing new employees, and providing reminders about organizational changes. Although although an organizations provide newsletters in print format, the trend now is to send them electronically through their emails or an intranet. This use of cyber publication saves printing expenses, allows for faster dissemination of information, and provide greater flexibility for making changes and updates. And then lastly, we have intranet. So intranet is used to replace bulletin boards, newsletters, and company manual in increasing number of organizations. Intranet is a wide version of internet, is an organization-wide version. Though the potential for intranet has barely been tapped, there are currently common sources for: first, online employee handbook; second is answers to frequently asked questions; then employees activity calendars, forms that can be completed online, programs to write job description or performance appraisal, job posting, online benefit information, training courses, and information about rewards and incentives. Another type of organizational communication is we have the business communication, wherein it is the transmission of business-related information among employees, management, and customer. It is done with the aid of memos, telephone calls, and emails, and voicemail. Memos are one of the most common method of business communication. It is called memorandum or memo. Memo have advantage of providing detailed information to a large number of people in a short period of time. It is with the widespread use of photocopy machine and computer printers. However, employees now receive so many memos that they often do not read them. And then we have the telephone calls. Telephone calls are methods appropriate only when the message was short and when only a few people needed to receive the communication. But with the advent of conference call, the number of people who can be reached by the methods has certainly increased. Furthermore, telephone calls were previously appropriate only for messages that did not involve details. But we can have the facsimile or the fax machine that will allow detailed sketches or numbers to be sent to people in different location in a matter of seconds, and this can be discussed over a phone call. Memos are being replaced with email and voicemail because to have sophisticated phone answering system. Voicemail and email are used primarily to exchange general and or timely information and ask questions. They are not meant as a substitute for important conversation. The advantages of email and voicemail includes reduction in the use and filing of papers and time saved by avoiding small talk when communicating a short message by phone. However, voicemail often result in a phone tag, and both email and voicemail reduce opportunity for personal contact. Email has many advantages over voicemail. This includes the ability to easily document the sending and receiving of email, the opportunities to communicate with many people at one time, and the potential for a quick response times, especially when some form of instant messaging is used. However, email's drawbacks is that it includes misinterpretation due to the absence of paralanguage, the tendency to be too informal, that increased likelihood of expressing negative emotions. Thus, that might not have been communicated in the person and tendency do not proofread messages. Before writing an email, decide if email is appropriate communication channel. Email is appropriate for preparing people for meetings, scheduling meetings, communication common news, and distributing memos and summarizing a conversation. Because emails eliminate factors such as body language and tone, it is easy to misinterpret the meaning of an email message. So we have here an etiquette for having a good email. So following is that we have first, email should include a greeting, can be hi or any. It also includes detailed subject line. And then do not write emails in all caps because it is difficult to read and comes across if you are screaming. And then if you are going to forward an email message, change the original subject line and delete the long list of previous messages or names of people to whom the email have been previously forwarded. And then take the same care in writing, like your spelling, your grammar, because it would take a writing into formal memo. Don't spend company time on personal email unless your organization specifically allows you to do so. And then allow ample time for the receiver to respond because not everyone consider email to require an immediate response. What are the things you need to consider or guidelines for sending a voicemail? First is you need to speak slow. Second, give your name at the beginning of the message and then repeat it at the end of the message. Spell your name if the person is not familiar with you or if your name is difficult to spell. And leave your phone number even if you don't think the person already has it. Next, avoid phone tag. This will indicate some good times that the person can return your call. And second, don't ramble. Appreciate the possibility of getting voicemail rather than talking to actual person and have a short message ready. Don't include information that you don't want other people to hear. Office design is used to facilitate employees' communication. 70% of organizations have adopted the openly or formally called open or landscape office design. It is now informally called cube form. It is done, or the design is done, to use large or open office areas without walls. Individual work units are separated into cubicles by such items as plant, bookcase, desk, and partition. It is behind with this the idea behind of this design is that employees will communicate better with one another and will be easier to supervise and help without the physical barriers of the wall. There are three common designs for an open or landscape office. We have the freestanding design, also called as ball pen design. All desks are placed in a large area that is completely open. With uniform plans, desks are placed at uniform distance and are separated by panels into cubicle areas, while free-form stations use a combination of designs so that the different needs of each worker can be accommodated. Two interesting trends in the office designs are bully board and portable office. A bully board is a wide hallway that runs through several departments. The width of the bully board allows space for impromptu employees' communication, and the path of the bully board through rather than around departments encourages employees' interaction. Because landscape or open office environment reduce privacy, many organizations have portable offices containing an employee's computer, file, and supplies that can be wheeled into a walled office or cubicles when privacy is needed. Another organizational communication is we have the informal communication, or also known as grapevines. This term originated back in Civil War when loosely hung telephone wires resembled grapevines. Because the communication across these lines was often distorted, and official communication is also to be distorted, and the term has been become synonymous with informal communication network. Grapevines are common because they provide employees with information, power, and entertainment. Not surprisingly, the increased use of emails had increased the importance of grapevines. The grapevines established the existence of four grapevines patterns. We have the single strand gossip, probability, and cluster. We have single strand grapevine. Example is that Jones passes a message to Smith, who passes the message to Brown, and so on until the message is received by someone or everyone. And this is something related to a child's game, telephone. The next pattern is we have the gossip grapevine. Example is that Jones passes the message to only a select group of people. Notice that with this pattern, only one person passes the message along, and not everyone has the chance to receive or will receive it. However, Probability grapevine example is that June tells the message to a few other employees and then in return randomly pass the message along other employees. However, the cluster grapevine is that June tells only a few selected employees who in turn tell the few select another. We have isolates where employees who receive less than half of the information, liaisons where employees who both receive most of the information and pass it to the other, dead, and the dead ender were those who hear most of the information but seldom pass it to another employee. The grapevine contains two types of information. We have the gossip and rumor. While both gossip and rumor contains poorly substantiated information, gossip is primarily about individual and the content of the message lacks significance to the person gossiping. However, rumor contains information that is significant to the lives of those communicating the message and can be about individual or other topics. Another organizational communication is we have the interpersonal communication. This is the exchange of message across a communication channel from one person to another. However, we have three problems with interpersonal. One is that intended message versus message sent. Second, message sent versus message received. And lastly, message received versus message interpreted. As shown, interpersonal communication process begins when a sender encoding and transmitting a message across a communication channel and ends with another person receiving and decoding the message. Although this seems like a simple process, there are three main problems where things can go wrong and interfere with the transmission of reception of the message. The first problem of informal communication is the intended message versus message sent. Interpersonal communication problems can occur when the message a person sends it is not the message she intended. There are three solutions that we can have to address the problem. We have first, think about what you want to communicate. Second, practicing what you want to communicate. And lastly, learning better communication skills. Second problem is that message sent versus message received. Even though an individual knows what she wants to say and say it exactly as she planned, many factors affects how the message is received. Such factors is we have the actual words used, artifacts, noise, nonverbal cues, communication channel, amount of information, and paralanguage. The actual words used. A particular word may mean one thing in one situation, but something else in another. A particular word may also mean one thing to one person and something to a different person. Use concrete words and ask how the other person might interpret your message. Thus, need to avoid using such words as soon as possible, I'll be back soon, I'll be out for a while, because these words might give a confusion to the receiver of your message. While you need to be concrete or you need to be specific and direct to avoid confrontation. And always remember to avoid being the bad guy. Another factor that you need to avoid is the gender differences in communication. It is believed that men and women speaks different language and have different communication style. Thus, you need to understand the differences in communication workplace as well as at home. So here are the list of the ways that men and women are different in terms of the way they communicate. Problems in communication can occur as a result of communication channel through which the message is transmitted. Information can be communicated in various ways, such as orally, verbally, throughout a second party, or through a written medium such as letter or memo. The same message can be interpreted in different ways based on the channel used to communicate. For example, an employee being reprimanded will receive a message very differently if it is communicated in a memo or an email rather than face to face. Another is that a miffed employee who gives the cold shoulder to a coworker will receive a different response than if she yelled at a coworker or discussed the anger with her. Another example of the channel importance is that a supervisor criticizing an employee in front of other employees. The employee might be so embarrassed and angered that she would not hear the content of the message. Again, transmitting a message through an inappropriate channel interferes with the message meaning and accurate interpretation. Often, the communication channel is the message itself. For example, if the top management sends a gopher to deliver a message, it is essentially communicating that either the message or the receiver is not important. A colleague at another university tells about a former boss who always personally delivers good news as well as donuts on Friday, but lower level management always have to communicate the bad news. Thus, a practice was resentment by the employee. No, another barrier is we have the noise. The noise surrounding a transmission channel can also affect the way a message is received. Just like karon madungog ninyo ang sounds or noises sa chicken. So it might irritate you or you're not it might have that you will not be interested in listening my topic. We have another barrier, we have the non-verbal cues. Much of what we communicate is conveyed by non-verbal means. Our words often say one thing, but our actions say another. For example, a supervisor may tell an employee that she is interested in hearing her opinion, while at the same time she is frowning and looking out the window. The verbal message from the supervisor may be I care, but nonverbal message is that I'm bored. Which message will employee pays attention? Most likely it will be the nonverbal ones, even though nonverbal cues often lead to incorrect impression. Nonverbal cues can be divided into 5 categories. One is the body language. Second is the paralanguage. Next is use of space, use of time, and artifacts. We have the body language. Body language is how we move and position our body. Body language communicates much to other people. For example, When one's body faces another person, it is often interpreted as a sign of liking, whereas when a person's body is turning away from another, it is often interpreted as a sign of dislike or lack of interest. Superiority is communicated by interrupting another, leaning back in a chair, moving close to someone, or sitting while another stands. Making eye contact implies interest. In a casual conversation, increase in eye contact is interpreted as a sign of liking. In a bar, it may be a sign of flirting, and on the football field, it may be interpreted as a sign of aggression. Lack of eye contact can mean many things, including disinterest, discomfort, or embarrassment. A person who loves or who makes eye contact while speaking but not while listening is often perceived as being powerful or dominant. Raising or lowering the head or the shoulder may indicate superiority or inferiority respectively. Touching someone usually indicates liking, friendship, or nurturance. In fact, a review of several studies indicated that servers who touch their customers will receive a large tip that than those who do not. Another studies found that library clerks who barely touch patrons or they were being handed books were rated by the patrons as being better employees than a clerk who did not touch. Another is that a meta-analysis by Di Paolo found that when people lie, they are more likely to purse, purse their lips, raise their chin, fidgets, and shows nervousness, and then they are not telling a lie. The body language can be useful source of information. It is important to understand that the same nonverbal cues can mean different things in different situations and culture. So be careful and try not to read too much into a particular nonverbal cues. Another is we have the use of space. The way people make use of space also provide nonverbal cues about their feelings and personality. Dominant people or those who have authority are given more space by other and at the same time take space from other. On the other hand, statues figures also increase space to increase difference between themselves and the people with whom they are dealing. Uh, There are four major spatial distance zones in the United States have been recognized and defined. We have the intimacy, personal distance, and social distance, and public distance. Intimacy are extended from physical contact to 18 inches away from a person and is usually received for close friendship such as dates, spouses, and family. When this zone is entered by stranger in a crowded elevators and they like we generally feel uncomfortable and nervous. Next is we have the personal distance zone. Ranges from 18 inches to 4 feet away from the person and is the distance usually received for friends and acquaintances. And next we have the social distance zone is from 4 to 12 feet away and is the distance typically observed when dealing with business people and strangers. Lastly, we have the public distance zone ranges from 12 to 25 feet away and is characterized and is a characteristic of a large group interaction as a lecture and a seminar. The other way an office is furnished also communicates a lot about that person. As a, as mentioned earlier, certain displacement indicates openness and power. Visitors and subordinates prefer not to sit before a desk that serves as a barrier. People whose office are untidy are perceived as busy and people whose office contain plants are perceived to be caring and concerned. Use of time. The way people make use of time is another element of nonverbal communication. If an employee is supposed to meet with a supervisor at 1, at the supervisor shows up 1:10, the supervisor is communicating an attitude about the employee, the importance of the message, or both. Tardiness is more readily accepted from a higher status person than from a lower status person. In a similar fashion, a supervisor set aside 30 minutes for the meeting and tells others that she is not to be disturbed because she is in a conference. A definitive message thus is conveyed, one that is likely to prevent constant interruption by telephone calls or people stopping by to say hello because they saw an open door. Care must be taken when considering how others use time, as there are tremendous cultural differences in such thing as being late and keeping to time schedule. For example, punctuality is important in the United States, Austria, Canada, and Japan, but not priority in Brazil, France, Saudi Arabia, even in Philippines. Basic assumption about nonverbal cues and paralanguage is that people are different in their use of nonverbal cues and paralanguage. There are standard differences among people reveal information about a person. It is also changes in person style reveals new message. Paralanguage involves the way we use things and consists of variables such as tone, tempo, volume, number and duration of pauses, and rate of speech. A message that is spoken quickly will perceive differently from one that is spoken slowly. In fact, research has shown that people with fast speech rates are perceived as more intelligent, friendly, and enthusiastic than those people with slow rates of speech. People who use many ums, ears, and are also considered as less intelligent. Men with high-pitched voices are considered to be weak, but women with high-pitched voices are considered to be petite. People telling lies talk less, provide fewer details, repeat words and phrases more often, have more uncertainty and vocal tension in their voice, and speak in higher pitch than people telling the truth. Simple changes in tone used to communicate a message can change the entire meaning of the message. Mention a simple change in tone used to communicate can change the entire meaning of the message. So let's have an example. I did not say Bill stole your car. If we give emphasis to the I, the meaning will change. The exact meaning will be someone else stole your car. However, if we put emphasis on the word did not, another meaning of this word or the message will be received. It will now have a meaning that I deny, I did not said Bill stole your car, and so on. So as the emphasis of the words changes, the meaning of the words or the message you send will have a different meaning at the receiver's end. A final element of nonverbal communication concerns the object or the artifacts that a person wears or with which she surrounds herself. A person who wears a bright color clothes is perceived differently from a person who wears conservative white or gray clothing. Similarly, the manager who placed all of her awards on her office wall, the executive with large and expensive chairs, and the student who carries a briefcase rather than a book bag are all making nonverbal statements about themselves. The amount of information contained in a message can affect the accuracy with which it is received. When a message contains more information than what we can hold in memory, the information becomes leveled, sharpened, and assimilated. Reaction to communication overload. So most likely, when employees is overloaded, she can adapt or adjust in one of several ways to reduce the stress. First is we have the omission, error, queuing, escape, using a gatekeeper, or using multiple channels. So with omission, a conscious decision not to process certain types of information. For example, a busy supervisor may let the phone ring without answering it so that she can finish her paperwork. Although this technique can work if the overload is temporary, it will be ineffective if an employee misses important communication. Second is the error. Error is a type of response the employees attempt to deal with every message she receives, but it is not. In so doing, each process message includes reception error. The processing error cannot intentionally but result from processing more than that can be handled. Second is that next is a queuing. Another method of dealing with communication overload is queuing, placing the work in a queue or waiting line. Another is escape. If a communication overload is prolonged, a common employee response is escape, usually through absenteeism and ultimately through resignation. Another is use of gatekeeper. Our response to communication overload, such as an executive, is the use of gatekeeper, a person who screens potential communication and allow only the most important to go through. That's why we have the receptionist, secretaries are most, and then use of multiple channel. The final coping response to communication overload is the multiple channel. With this strategy, an organization reduces the amount of communication going to one person by directing some of it to another. The third problem is we have message received versus message interpreted. Even though a person knows what she wants to say and says it the way she wants, and even though another individual properly receives the intended message, its meaning can change depending on the way in which the receiver interprets the message. This interpretation is affected by the variety of factors such as listening skills, listening styles, emotion state, cognitive ability, and a person's biases. Listening is probably the most important communication skills that a supervisor should master. It is found that 70% of the white-collar workday is spent communicating. Of that, 9% is spent in writing, 16% is reading, 30% in speaking, and 45% is listening. Thus, a manager spends more time listening than doing any other single activity. It is important to point for two reasons. First, listening is a skill, and our formal education in high school and college does not prepare us for managerial communication. We are required to take English courses to improve our reading and writing, and are usually required to take one speech course to improve our oral communication skills. but we spend little, if any, time learning how to listen. Thus, the amount of time spent learning around various types of communication is inversely related to the actual amount of time spent by the manager on the job. Second is that listening effectiveness is poor. It has estimated that immediately after a meeting, we retain only 50% of the materials we have heard and only 25% of the materials 48 hours later. Although much of this loss can be attributed to poor memory practices, some is the result of poor listening habits. Listening style. Skinner and Doney developed a test, the so-called attitudinal listening profile, to measure an employee's listening style. This theory postulates six main styles of listening. First is leisure, second inclusive, stylistic, technical, emphatic, and confirming. Leisure listening is a practice by good time people who will only listen for words that indicate pleasure. For example, a student who is a leisurely listener will pay attention only when the teacher is interesting and tells jokes. As an employee, she is the last one to hear that employees are needed to work overtime. Another one is the inclusive listening. It is a style of the person who listens for the main idea behind any communication. In an hour-long meeting full of details and facts about about a decline in sales, the only information this type of listener will hear is the main point that sales are down and that the things had better improve. These listening styles can be advantage when cutting through a jungle of details, but it can be a disadvantage when details is important. Another style is we have the stylistic listening. It is practiced by the person who listens to the way the communication is presented. Stylistic listener will not listen unless the speaker's style is appropriate, the speaker looks the part, or both. For example, when speaking to a stylistic listener, a lecturer on finance will find an attentive ear only if she wears a nice suit. After all, this listener's reasons if the lecturers cannot afford a nice suit, why listen to what she says about investing money? Similarly, if speaker says that an event will fund, she must sound as if she means it. And if an employee calls in sick to a manager who is stylistic listener, she had better sound sick. Another style is we have technical listening. It is a style practiced by jackwebs of the listening world, those who wants just the facts map. The technical listener hears and retains large amount of details, but she does not hear the meaning of those details. In earlier examples of the meeting in which employees are told that the sales have decreased, the technical listener will hear and remember that the sales last year were 12.3% higher than this year's, thus profit are down by 21%, and that 6 employees will probably be laid off. But she will miss the point that unless sales improve, she could not she could be the one of those 6. Empathic listening tunes in to the feelings of a speaker and of the 6 listening types. It is the mostly like to pay attention to non-verbal cues. Thus, an empathic listener will listen to an employee complain about her boss and is the only one of the 6 types of listener who will not only pay attention but also understand that the employee's complaints indicate true frustration and happiness. Last style is we have non-conforming listening. It is practiced by individual who attends only to information that is consistent with her way of thinking. If the non-conforming listener does not agree with the speaker, she will not listen to what the speaker says. Furthermore, the confirming listener will pay attention only to those people she considered to be strong or have authority. Other factors that will have a different interpretation of the message or emotional state. With this, the interpretation of a message can certainly be affected by the receiver's emotional state. When we are mad, anxious, depressed, elated, or upset, we do not think as clearly as when our moods are more moderate. Think of the last time you had an agreement with someone. How rational and intelligent was your conversation? After the argument was over, did both of you remember what was said in the same way? Likewise, have you ever attended a class when your mind was somewhere else? My guess is that neither your attention span nor your comprehension of the materials was as high as normal. Another factor is the cognitive ability. Cognitive ability is another factor that can be affected the way in which a receiver message is interpreted. That is, a person can receive a message exactly as it was sent, yet not be bright enough to understand it. For example, have you ever attended a class where you have no idea what the professor was talking about? You heard her words and saw her diagram, but the message still have no sense. Likewise, have you ever told a great pun only to disappoint that the person is receiving end of a joke did not understand it? If you did, so have finished first-hand experience in understanding how cognitive ability can affect the way in which information is interpreted. Another is the bias. Our biases obviously affects our ability to interpret information we receive. For example, we can hate a political candidate so much that we can refuse to process any of the positive information we hear about her. We do not, however, process every piece of information that is consistent with our opinion. And then we have drugs and alcohol. As we all know, it can affect the function and the ability of our brain. In addition to understanding on how your listening styles, you can improve your listening effectiveness in many other ways, such as you can instead of talking, you stop talking and listen. Let the other people or person finish speaking and then focus on what the person is saying rather than on how well they are saying it, what your next response will be, or what you will eat for lunch. Try to understand what that person is trying to say. Ask questions to make sure you understand the person's point, but don't ask so many questions that they distract the speaker. Another tip is for you to be patient and keep an open mind. If you disagree, you can always do so after the person is finished talking. Also, show the speaker you want to listen by using nonverbal cues such as making eye contact and nodding your head. Then, remove or resist distraction that will keep you from listening. And then, last, be silent for a few seconds after the person has finished speaking. They will encourage the person to continue to talk. You will be sure they will have finished talking and it will give you time to respond calmly. Interpersonal communication skills can be subdivided into oral communication skills and written communication skills. So now, how would you be able to improve your written communication skills? So we have two ways. We have first, improve your writing, and second, make materials easier to read. So, or its readability. Writing is easiest to read when it is short sentences, uses simple rather than complex words, uses common rather than unusual words. Spelling errors are minimized, rather, 12th grade reading level. Some employees might have hard time to read, so it is advised that if you do make memo, at least it even no college education can read it. At least a level of 12th grade in reading comprehension, and then there must be various reading indices available for them to be able to understand what they are reading. So here So here are the examples of readability indices can be used. So methods, average number of syllables per word. So another topic that we have is the group behavior, teams, and conflict. And now for our chapter 13's learning objectives, we have first, understand what constitutes a group and a team. Second, learn why people join groups. Third is we have know how to increase group performance. Fourth, understand how teams operate. And fifth, we have be able to decide when groups perform better than individuals. And then next, we have know why the team approach is not always the best. And then understand the cause of conflict. And lastly, know how to reduce conflict. According to Moline, employees seldom works in isolation. Thus, they did not work alone. They work with other people. Groups are characteristics of all social situations. Most employees' behavior takes place in groups or teams, thus important to understand group dynamics. People in group influence each other in various ways. Thus, groups may develop hierarchy and leadership. Styles of groups affects groups. Groups are crucial to the function of work organizations because through work groups, first, members can pool their resources like talents, energy, resourcefulness, and etc. It provides professional identities for members. It satisfies the human needs for social interaction and develop of interpersonal relationship on the job. And lastly, it will help establish rules for proper behavior in the work settings and thus plays an important role in determining the course of action the work and organization will follow. Unfortunately, for a group, it does not agree with one definition. Many or any of the number of people interacting with one another physiologically aware of one another and perceive themselves to be in a group. A group is two or more individuals engaged in social interaction to achieve some goals. It is definable membership, group's consciousness, shared purpose, interdependence, interaction, and ability to act in unitary manner. In order for us to identify that it's already a group, it should meet at least 4 criteria. One is that members must see themselves as a unit. Second, group must provide rewards to members. And third, the members of the group share a common goal. And fourth, corresponding effects. Whatever happened to a member affects every other member. Groups and norms. Norms are rules that groups adapt, governing appropriate and inappropriate behavior for members. Norms have several purposes. They first facilitate group production, second, increase prediction of group members' behavior, and third, provide a sense of identity to the group. Next is we have the basic group process or conformity. Conformity is the process of adhering to a group norms. Conformity is often very strong and helps maintain order and uniformity in groups' behavior. It is extreme and repeated norm violation result in ostra ostracism from the group. Members who have more power, example the group leader, or who usually conforms to norms are more likely to be successful in confirming behavior. Another basic process says we have the group efficacy. Group efficacy is a group's shared beliefs that they can attain organizational outcomes. Individual member self-efficacy contributes to group efficacy, which in turn increase cohesiveness and productivity. Group efficacy is a better predicator of group's performance than the sum of individual members' self-efficacy. Group's efficacy enhances job satisfaction and organizational commitment. Also, leaders can have an important effect on group efficacy. Another basic process we have the cooperation. Cooperation is very likely in work groups because it is difficult to accomplish work goals alone. Cooperation is often based on the reciprocity rules, the tendency for person to pay back those to whom they are indebted for assistance. Cooperation increases with task interdependency. The degree to which an individual task performance depends on the effort or skills of others. Lastly, social loafing occurs when individual working in group exert less effort than they work alone. Another process is we have competition. Competition is the process whereby group members are pitted against one another to achieve individual goals, such as the wage system in the US and internationally are often competitive in nature. Example, these bonuses, promotions are available. While competition may increase motivation to perform, the introduction of competition when goals are already set may lead to a decrease in performance. Reasons for joining a group. First is we have assignment. In the workplace, the most common reason for joining a group is that employees are assigned to them. For example, a new employee might be assigned to a department with 5 other employees. 5 employees might be appointed to serve on a committee and 10 employees are scheduled for the same training class. While another reason is that physical proximity. One especially strong reason that a person might join a particular group, especially if the group is informal, is physical proximity. That is, that is, people tend to form groups with people who either live or work nearby. Another reason is that affiliation. Affiliation involves our need to be with other person. That's one reason people join group is to be near and talk to other people. Another reason is we have the identification. It is our desire for identification with some groups or cause. There are many examples of the need to identify with others. And then another is that we have emotional support. We also join group to obtain emotional support. Alcoholics, anonymous, gamblers, anonymous, and Weight Watchers are a good example of groups that provide emotional support for their member. A quick perusal or of ads in the local paper or quick surfing on the net will demonstrate the importance of these needs, as there were hundreds of different types of support group. Another reason is we have assistance or help. People often join groups to obtain assistance or help. Example, students having problem with algebra class might form a group study or study group. Or on the reality show Survivor, contestants might form alliance to increase the odds to not being booted out of the island. Another is we have the common interest. People often join groups because they share a common interest. Example, at school, student joining a geology club shares an interest in geology. And also, the last reason is we have the common goal. People who join political parties exemplifies being in pursuit of a common goal. These people may also share common interests, but their primary purpose is to get a particular person or member of a particular party elected to the office. To apply the material factors affecting group performance are group's cohesiveness and group's ability and confidence, personality to group member, communication network, group rules, presence of others, and individual dominance or groupthink. What is group cohesiveness? It is the extent to which group members like and trust each other, committed to accomplish a team goal, and share a feeling of group pride. Cohesiveness is the degree of attraction among group members. With cohesiveness, it increases member satisfaction but only increases productivity when it is work related. Cohesiveness increases when group members have equal status. Cohesiveness increases as well when increased stability of group membership. Greater similarity of group member increases cohesiveness. The we feel feeling is cohesiveness created by the existence of the threat to the group. Group cohesiveness are influenced by many elements, one of which is a group homogeneity, stability of membership, isolation, external pressure, group size, and group status. So first we have group homogeneity. It is the extent to which members are similar. Homogeneous or heterogeneous will lead to the best group performance. Stability of membership. The greater the stability, the greater the cohesiveness. Thus, members who remain for a long period of time are more cohesive and perform better than groups that have high turnover. Another element is the isolation. Groups that is isolated tends to be highly cohesive. Also, external pressure. Groups that are pressured by external forces tends to be highly cohesive, which can be explained by the phenomenal psychosocial reactance. And then next is we have the group size. Groups are most cohesive and perform best when the size is small. However, not all small groups are always the best. Also depends on the task. Group size and task. There are three types of tasks. We have the additive task, conjunctive task, and disjunctive task. So additive tasks are those for which the group's performance is equal to the sum of the performances by each group member. Each group member's contribution is important. Thus, larger group is better than smaller group. Another type of task is we have the conjunctive tasks are those for which group performance depend on the least effective group members. The smaller groups are best. However, on the disjunctive tasks are those which the group's performance is based on the most talented group member. Thus, larger groups are better. So here are examples of types of task or task type. We have the additive task. So group activity, typing, pool, relay race, bowling team, or car washing. Disjunctive task, problem solving, brainstorming, golf tournament, and then conjunctive task, we have the assemble line and hiking. Group size and variation. The additional of the new member to a group has the greatest effect when the group is small. Example, a single great player can turn a poor basketball team into a victorious team. The effects of size is also different with different apparatus used. Example, when the use of computer, larger groups appear to perform best and members are most satisfied. Another group cohesiveness is that group status. The higher the group status, the greater is the cohesiveness. This group can be more cohesive by increasing its status, at least in the eyes of the member. Another factors affecting group performance is the group ability and competence. Groups with high ability members outperform groups with low ability members. Groups whose members believe that their team can be successful performs better than those whose team members are not confident. Another factor is we have the personality or group member. Groups with members who scores high in the openness and emotional stability will perform better than groups whose members do not have any of these characteristics. Another factor is the communication network. Communication network affects groups' performance. The best network depends on the situation and the goals of the group. A group leader must choose the best communication network which facilitates the achievements of the group's goal. Communication structure as shown on the diagram, chain communication structures is that Bob communicates to Jel and then Jel communicates to Piggy. However, on the centralized structure, Bob communicates to Jill and vice versa, and then Bob can communicate to Piggy and vice versa. And then circle, we have Jill communicate to Piggy, and then Piggy communicate to Bob, Bob communicate to Jill. We have the open. Open structure is we have Jill can communicate to Piggy and it can communicate to Bob. Same goes with Piggy, it can communicate to Jill and Bob. Bob can communicate to Jill and Piggy. So another factors affecting group performance is the group rules. Rules or patterns of behavior that are adopted based on expectation about the functions of position in the group. Rules expectation are beliefs concerning the responsibilities and requirements of a particular rule. Rule differentiation is the process by which group members learn to perform various rules. Earlier researchers identified three categories of work rules in group. One is group task rules. They are related to getting the job done. And then another is we have group building and maintenance. This rules deals with maintaining personal relationship among members. And we have the self-centered rules. This involves satisfying personal rather than group goals. So here are some possible individual rules that an individual play in a work group. So they can be initiator, information seeker, opinion seeker, information giver, information option giver, elaborator, coordinator, orientor, evaluator, energizer, procedural technicians, and recorder. On the other hand, rules under group building and maintenance, they can be encourager, harmonizer, compromiser, gatekeeper, standard setter, group observer, and follower. And then the self-centered rules, we have the aggressor, blocked, recognition seeker, self-confessor, dominator, help seeker, and special interest pledger. Rules ambiguity involves a sense of uncertainty over the requirements of particular rules. However, rule conflict results when the expectation associated with one rule interfere with the expectation concerning another rule. Organizational socialization is the process by which new employees learn group rules and norms and develop specific work skills and abilities. Organizational socialization occurs in stages. One is the anticipatory socialization, accommodation, and rule management. So first, anticipatory socialization, it is when new employees develop expectation concerning the high job and assesses they fit in the organization. Second is the accommodation. New employees learn about work group rules and norms. And then lastly, role management. Newcomers transition to regular employees or regular member. Another factor is we have presence of others. Socialization, facilitation, and inhibition is a mere presence of other. Comparisons of performance, evaluation, apprehension, and destruction. While social loafing is effort when won't be noticed, free rider theory, and soccer theory. And then we have another factor, individual dominance. It can be by group leader or by group member. So if the leader has accurate solution to the problem in the group, then the group performs to high level. So another factor as well, we have the groupthink. Groupthink is a syndrome characterized by the concurrence seeking tendency that overrides the ability of a cohesive group to make critical decisions. Groupthink can occur when the group is cohesive, insulated with an outsider, believes it is infallible, it is morally superior, under group pressure to conform, has leader who promotes a favorite solution, and its keepers who keep information from the member. So here are the symptoms of groupthink. So we have illusion of invulnerability, illusion of morality, shared negative stereotypes, collective rationalization, self-censorism, illusion of anonymity, direct conformity pressure, and mind guards. Group versus individual performance. When several people work individually on a problem but do not interact, they are called nominal group. When several individuals interact to solve a problem, they are called interacting group. Research shows that interacting group will usually outperform one individual, but interacting groups do not outperform nominal groups. Interacting groups are more risky, while individual or nominal groups are more creative and higher quality comparison using brainstorming activities. It makes a decision more quickly. Nominal versus interacting groups. There is a tendency for interacting groups to take more extreme position than the position of individual members. This tendency is called polarization. Polarization is the tendency for a group to make decisions that are more extreme than those made by individuals. On the other hand, the superiority of nominal group over interacting group may depend on the type of task. According to Wilson, criticizes the result of the research, which seems to be conclude that superiority of nominal over interacting groups. He believes that the tasks were too easy, and if the tasks were difficult, the interacting groups are superior. So how can we distinguish groups from a team? Not all groups are team. Team occurs when a number of people have a common goal and recognize that their personal success is dependent on the success of others. They are all interdependent. Teams are more likely to consist of people with diverse ability, with their own specialization and different perspective to ensure the completion of a common task. Teams also usually develops more interdependency compared to groups. Members in team have high degree of group identity and thus more likely to identify themselves as a team. All team consist of groups, but not all groups are teams. Comparison between groups and team. So in terms of size, teams are limited, whereas groups can be medium or large. In terms of selection, teams are crucial, and then groups are immaterial. Leadership, we have shared or rotating inside the team, and then group is solo. So usa lang ang mag-leader, balik-balik. Perception, mutual knowledge, understanding, and groups focus on leader. Style, rules spread coordination, whereas in groups, convergence, conformism. Spirit, teams are dynamic interaction, however, groups, togetherness, and persecution of opponents. The concept of employee work teams has been around for decades and is often called as quality circle, but their use has greatly increased in the 1990s. Teamwork best in situation in which the job requires high level of employee interaction, team approach will simplify the job. Team can do something an individual cannot, and there is time to create a team and properly train team members. A work team is a collection of three or more individuals who interact intensively to provide an organization's product, plan, decision, or service. At times, putting employee into teams fail because the team is really a group or a committee rather than a true team. In fact, according to the survey of practitioners who work with teams, only 48% of the work group would be officially classified as a team. Before calling a group or an individual a team, several factors should be considered. So these are the factors to consider to be called a team. First is identification, interdependence, power differentiation, social distance, conflict management tactics, and negotiation process. So what is identification? Identification is the extent to which group members identify with a team rather than other groups. For example, suppose a committee was created composed of one representative from each of 5 departments. During the meeting, members use such state as our departments would agree. We didn't even want to do in this committee. Second is interdependence. In a team, members' needs and desire the assistance, expertise, and opinion of the other member. If a team member can perform her job without the assistance of the other, the team do not meet the definition of the group. For example, some teams, such as surgical teams in a hospital, have very high task interdependence in that what one member does greatly influence what other member does. One other teams have low task interdependence in that each member completes a task and the separate parts are then compiled. Second factor is that power differentiation. In a team, members try to decrease power differentiation by treating others as equals and taking steps to ensure quality. In the group that are not teams, member challenges, correct, and interrupt each other, give orders, and use sarcasm. For example, I work with one organization that have administrative team. What I discovered, however, was that one individual in the team was treated differently, had less authority, and had no voting power. Consequently, rather being a team, they are called a committee. In team, members apologize for overstepping the rules, ask indirect questions to avoid challenges, and are polite to one another. For example, in the team, a member might disagree with another member by saying something like, I don't know your field as well as you do, but what if we tried? Whereas in a non-team, a member might disagree saying, that's so stupid, I'll tell you what will work. Another factor is the social distance. In a team, members try to decrease social distance by being casual, using nicknames, and expressing liking, empathy, and common views. Non-team members use formal language and forms of address, excessive politeness, and impersonal conversation. And then we have conflict management tactics. Team members respond to conflict by collaborating, whereas non-team members respond by forcing and accommodating. In non-team members reacts to conflict by threatening directly, directing, or giving in. In team, members try to understand the other views, make attempts to compromise, and use non-threatening tones. Lastly, negotiation process. In teams, members negotiate in a win-win style in which the goal is for every person to come out ahead. In non-teams, members negotiate so that they will win and the other members lose. On the basis of six factors just discussed, place teams into one of the five categories. We have the collaborative team, emergent teams, adversarial teams, nominal teams, and dome teams. A team is an interdependent group of workers with contemporary skills working toward shared goals. Teams are most appropriate for complex tasks, complex decision making, and creative tasks. Teams are also appropriate when the situation is variable, requiring the team to adapt to changing external conditions. Self-managing work teams have complete responsibility for the whole task. So here are the guidelines for effective functioning of work team. 1. The task is one that is appropriate for a work team. Second, team is recognized as such by its own members and others in the organization. Third, team has a clear authority over the task. Fourth, the structure of the team including the task, the team members, and the team norm need to promote teamwork. Fifth, the organization must provide the team through policies and systems specifically designed to support the work team needs. Sixth, expert coaching and feedback are provided to the teams when it's needed and when teams members are ready to receive it. Here are the types of teams. We have work team, parallel team, project team, management teams. So we have project teams. It exists in every type of organization. It consists of a variety of individuals who get together to solve problems or make decisions. In project teams, the individuals are usually specially assigned to coordinate the successful completion of an assigned task. Example, a student's affair administrator of a campus police detective usually work under a dateline and work fast. And then we have work teams. It exists also in every type of organization. It consists of individual of variety who gets together to solve problems or make decisions. It is a group of people who are responsible for the entire process of segments of the process that delivers a product or services to an internal or external customer. Usually, they are subdivisions of a larger group, can exist for an indefinite period of time or until a specific project is completed. Work team can also serve many purposes including solving problems, making decisions, and socializing and learning. Groups and teams. Although there are distinctions between groups and teams, the differences are not dramatic. It exists on a continuum, have some more characteristics of a group, while other resembles more of a team. Work team focus group. Focus group is a special form of work team. Usually consists of manageable number of participants plus a facilitator or a leader. The goal for formation of the teams is to find out what the members think about specific ideas, issues, or people. Information obtained will be analyzed and used for decision making. So how teams develop. So we have four stages of team development. We have forming, storming, norming, and performing. So forming, team members get to know one another. Everyone is on their good behavior. Groups clarifies its mission. And then on the storming stage, disagreements and frustration will set in. Norming stage, group members work at easing tension, acceptance of a team leader, and then performing, goals get accomplished. According to punctuated equilibrium theory, the teams develop, but that it does not go through set stages. Basic methods for formation is that it develops direction and strategies during the first meeting, then follows this direction for a period of time, revise their strategy about halfway through the life of the team. Why don't why do teams don't always work? The team is not a team. Excessive meeting requirements, lack of empowerment, lack of skills, distrust the team process, and unclear objectives. So those are the reasons. Group conflict. Working together in a group or a team always present the potential for occurrence of conflict. Key concepts to conflict is perception. The level of conflict is a function of the importance of the goal, behavior, or relationship. Conflict is a psychological and behavioral reaction to a perception that another person is keeping from reaching a goal, taking away your right to behave a certain way, and violating the expectancies of a relationship. Conflict can be functional or dysfunctional. Most conflicts results in lower team performance and lower member satisfaction. Most conflicts are dysfunctional as the conflicts prevent people from working together, lessen productivity, and increase turnover. Moderate degree of conflict, called functional conflict, can result in better performance because it stimulates new ideas, increase friendly competition, and increase team effectiveness. Moderate conflict reduces the risk of larger conflict. Consequences of dysfunctional conflict. First, it decreases productivity, lower morale, absenteeism, stress, turnover, lawsuit, and violence. Types of conflicts can be interpersonal conflict, individual or group conflict, group conflict. What are the causes of conflict? First is competition for resources. Second is task interdependence. Third is jurisdictional ambiguity. Fourth is communication barrier. It can be physical, cultural, or psychological. Fifth is beliefs. Sixth is personality. So here are the personalities according to the types of difficult people. So as shown in the table, these are tanks. They are control freak. They pushes, yells, intimidates. Sniper. They need control. Uses sarcasm. Criticizes. Know it all. As well, they are control. They want control. Dominance conversations. Whiner. Perfectionist. Constant complaints, and so on. How can we deal difficult people? So here are the ways we have intervention to deal with difficult people. We have direct intervention, direct coping, and indirect coping. Direct intervention is that you need to address the behavior, explain impact of behavior on others. And then indirect intervention, use positive feedback when appropriate behavior is used. Direct coping, separate difficult employee from other. Indirect coping, provide trainings to other on dealing with difficult personalities. How can we resolve conflict? So we have three ways: prevention, prior to conflict occurrence, when conflict first occur, and third party intervention. Preventing workplace conflict. An organization should have a formal policy on how conflict to be handled, which states that employees should first try to resolve their own conflicts. If the above is not successful, employees can utilize a third-party intervention. Next is that employees should receive trainings on the causes of conflicts, ways to prevent conflicts, and strategies to resolve it. There should be a well-written job description, an ambiguous policy, clarification of rules and expectation, trainings on new policies, conflict management trainings, and for teams, you have to clarify the level of authority within the teams. So resolving conflicts at the time that the conflict first occurred. So in this, the two parties should be encouraged to use conflict resolution skills which they have learned from the previous trainings and all. These skills include expressing a desire for cooperation, offering compliments, avoiding negative interaction, emphasizing mutual similarities, and highlighting common goals. Key, key to resolving conflict is to reduce tension and increase trust between the two parties, which can be accomplished by first, stating an intention to reduce tension, publicly announcing steps to be taken to reduce tension, inviting the other side to take action and to reduce tension, and make sure all initiatives are unambiguous. When a conflict is unavoidable, there are several ways or styles to be adapted. What determines one responses to conflict? According to Godwin and Griffith, states that one response to conflict is determined by two considerations. First is how important is a particular outcome to you? And second, how important is the relationship with the other party? Okay. So here are the styles that you can refer if the conflict is unavoidable. First is avoiding style, second forcing style, accommodating, collaborating, and compromising style. The diagram shows the different styles that can be used in managing the conflict. Responses to conflicts. First is avoidance. It is done when people will adopt avoiding approach to conflict when the conflict is trivial to them or has little stake in an outcome or concerned with whom there is dispute. The issues are not important to them. Hope the issues will go away. Thus, the cost of engaging in a conflict is not worthy the possible benefit to be gained. So the needs to buy time such as the gathered information. Avoidance response is also called withdrawal or retreating. Why? Because it failing to engage. Avoidance can be partial or totally avoidance. Common withdrawal behaviors include talking behind the back and forming alliance with others. Withdrawal can be make one feel better. What other variables are at play if this response style is adopted? Triangling is a form of avoidance and it is when they partially involve discusses the conflict with a third party with the hope that the third party will talk to the other person who is involved in the conflict. What is the best course of action for a supervisor where a triangle occur? Another style is we have the adversarial forcing or competitive. This style is a win or lose approach. Thus, what it takes to win with little regard for the other party. One of the underlying beliefs is that resources are limited. This style may range from mildly adversarial to extremely aggressive. Behavior that exemplifies this approach includes making remarks with no regards to the other people's feelings, refusing to back down, belittling the other, using accusatory tactics, and the like. Forcing or competitive styles. This style is self-centered. On the extreme, this style may lead to trickery and violence. Another behavior which may be associated with this approach are agreeing openly but internally dissatisfied and criticizing, defensiveness, stonewalling, and contempt. The strategy of winning at all costs holds especially when one party considers his or her side is correct and the other party is incorrect. Especially crucial when each side needs the victory to gain or retain status. Example, union or management conflicts. Disadvantage of competitive or forcing style. It damages a relationship. Second, it creates other conflict. Third, backing down difficult when involves status, more likely to prolong conflict. And then appropriate in emergencies or when it is advantage if it is in emergency or when there is a violation or policy or ethical or legal grounds or when the position holder is actually correct and if the winning conflict is more important than the possible damage to future relationship. Another style is we have accommodating. This style is to give up part of you want at the request of the other. This used when a person is so earnest of settling a conflict. Stakes are usually high and the person is considered cooperative but weak. With accommodating, low in assertiveness and high in cooperation. Appropriate to use when one party wants to show reasonableness, develop performance, create goodwill, or keep peace. Some people use accommodating mode when the issues or outcome is of low importance to them. Additionally, accommodating mode can be problematic when one uses the mode keep a tally or to be a martyr. Accommodating skills is forgetting your desires, selflessness, ability to yield, obeying other. Another styles is the collaboration. It is an incorporation or collaboration style where finding a way to get other person or group what they want and what we or group want. It is consistent with win-win approach. Both parties put their efforts together to meet mutual goals. Key behaviors are listening and expressing feelings and desire in the best manner. It is assertiveness and respecting other people's view are essential. In the collaborating mode is high assertiveness and high cooperation. Collaboration has been described as putting an idea on top of an idea on top of an idea in order to achieve the best solution is to a conflict. With such a positive outcome for collaboration, some people will profess that the collaboration mode is always the best conflict mode to use. However, collaborating takes a great deal of time and energy. Therefore, collaborating mode should be used when the conflict warrants time and energy. A collaboration style or mode is appropriate when the conflict is important to the people who are constructing an integrative solution, when the issues are too important to compromise, when merging perspectives, when gaining commitments or rather, when improving relationship or when learning. Here are the skills that involves in collaborating style or collaboration. One is active listening. Second is non-threatening confrontation. Third, identifying concern. And lastly, analyzing inputs. We have another style, the compromising. When in compromising, the people adapting this style utilizes give and take strategies to enable each side to get some of what it wants but not everything it wants. Most conflicts are resolved through some forms of compromise so that the solution benefit both sides. Compromise usually involves a great deal of negotiation and bargaining. The negotiation process begins with each side making an offer that asks for more than it really wants. Each side understands what the other is doing and the process continues until an acceptable terms are achieved. Compromising style or mode is moderate assertiveness and moderate cooperation. Some people define compromise as giving up more than you want, while others sees compromise as both parties winning. Compromise is appropriate when you are dealing with issues or moderate in importance. Second, when you have equal power status. Third, when you have a strong commitment for resolution, or use as a temporary solution when there are time constraints. So here are the skills involved in compromising. First is negotiating. Second is finding a middle ground. Third is assessing values. Fourth is making consensus. Choosing an appropriate style. All of the styles may be used in one negotiation. However, each of the styles can be used appropriately at different times. The collaborative style is usually the most effective choice, but not all the time. Styles may vary from person to person and from situation to situation. In conflict matter, containing many issues may compromise on certain things, while main approach is collaborative. For issues not important and not worth it to put your energy on, you may use avoidance. Uh, Seldom competitiveness or forcing is the best choice but a necessity when in an emergency or when you have to act accordingly, especially when the other parties is competitive. Collaboration is most of the time the best approach. It needs lots of effort and creativity. You may have to do what you are not used to do. The optimum negotiation strategy will be determined by dynamic interaction of each party, unique personality styles of interaction, temperament, also culture, value, needs, goals, etc. Our natural negotiation styles is strongly influenced by our view of conflict and our personality. Creativity is always useful. Knowing ourselves aids in developing alternative styles as well as using our natural styles to the optimum. We have the third-party intervention. Impasse may occur at any point in a process of negotiation and persuasion process. A third party may then be necessary to facilitate agreement and resolution. A third-party intervention can help the conflicting parties to reach either a mediation, arbitration, or litigation. Dictation is also a third-party intervention that can be used at the workplace. So again, these are the types of third-party intervention. We have the dictation, arbitration, mediation, litigation. Dictation is where supervisor dictates the solution. Dictation is best when parties are irrational, no trust exists, too angry to be realistic, have mental health issues, alcohol or drugs are involved, when violent behavior is potential, and then parties have poor communication skills, and there are time constraints. On the other hand, meditation is a natural part is asked to help both parties to reach a mutual agreeable solution to the conflict. Mediator do not make decision. Mediator's role is to facilitate communication process so as to provide the conflicting parties safe and equitable venue for reaching solution. Mediators can be employees of the organization such as team leader, supervisor, etc. can be professional mediators. For mediation to be successful, both parties must agree that there is a conflict and that a solution can be found through working together. Next is we have arbitration. In arbitration, the conflicting parties involved forego their control over the outcome. The arbitrator reserves all the functions served by a mediator plus the function of resolution. In arbitrator, the decision is made by the arbitrator. The use of outside arbitrator is on the increase. To handle discrimination claims by employee, these are to avoid the negative publicities associated with discrimination suits and to reduce the cost of litigation. Mandatory arbitration can be effective. Arbitrator is more expensive than mediation. Arbitrator can either be binding or non-binding. Arbitrator can end conflict quickly, but usually neither side is satisfied with the outcome as both would have it if they settle the conflict themselves or use mediation. Employees use arbitration when it is perceived that the conflict is the result of intentional behavior by another. Resolution of conflict has important consequences, and lastly, the conflicting parties are of equal power. Some research suggests that performance may drop and turnover increases as the result of an arbitrator's decision. Lastly, we have the litigation. It involves parties lose control over the outcome. This is a win-lose option, costly and time-consuming. It takes only one party to land everyone in court. However, at times litigation is unavoidable. Instrument in determining your conflict management style can be found under Organization Conflict Inventory and Cohen Conflict Response Inventory. Before I end my discussion, let me leave you with this quote from James chapter 3 verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. That's gonna be all for my report. I hope you learned something out of it, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.